Comparison price for Tuesday, June 17th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. And as always, the show presentation of Bet365. I'm Matt, he's Blake, Mike and all his Junos, hitting switches, conducting things.
Always conducting.
Big show coming up for you as we are 2 weeks to the day from Canada Day and free agency, the beginning of a new league year in the NHL. Still have a Stanley Cup Final to meet out, though. We will get to that in a moment. But we start with our Whistler Golf Club poll question. Does Bowen Byram make sense for the Vancouver Canucks? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Comparison Price X and YouTube channels. We've been talking about Bowen Byram for some time, going back to before the Canucks dramatically remade their roster midseason with those trades to the New York JT Miller to the New York Rangers, and then of course Marcus Pettersson back to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And call me naive, but I thought we were done with the Byram talk after those trades were consummated, thinking Vancouver Canucks look pretty good on defense, particularly on that left side where young Elias Pettersson stepped up in the second half of the season as well. But that name just won't go away. The Canucks are reportedly still interested. And Adrian Dater, the longtime hockey scribbler in Denver, tweeted yesterday, Byram wants to be a Canuck. He is from Cranbrook, British Columbia, of course, played his junior hockey with the Vancouver Giants. The wanting out of Buffalo has been a thing for some time here, in part because of the young defenseman in front of him, Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. So more opportunity elsewhere, in part to run a power play or play more offensive minutes. Look, I was quite surprised a couple of weeks ago when Patrick Johnson told us that, the Canucks are in on Byram. There are two theories as to why the Canucks would have interest in Byram and be considering making a trade for him, despite the obvious and glaring needs up front at forward. One is that you just build the best defense core you possibly can with the slim pickings available on the free agent forward market, and with the difficulty of trading for a top six, particularly a top two center iceman. Mm-hmm. Just go ahead, be great on the back end, hope that generates some offense for you because you're not playing in your own zone a whole lot and you're making good, crisp outlet passes and generating rush chances. The other school of thought, of course, is prepping for a Quinn Hughes departure. That if you think this is your final year with Quinn Hughes, you are going to need a replacement. Is Byram Quinn Hughes? Of course not, but he's a top four left side defenseman, and you don't take that far back a step if, in fact, you have to move Quinn Hughes next summer. I voted no. It's more a nice to do than a need to do for me, because I can't imagine he's going to come all that cheaply in trade. And I think whatever assets they do have and want to peddle should be targeted and directed towards top six forwards.
Okay, a few things that need to be rolled out for context in all of this.
Did I miss context, Blake?
Further context. Gave some.
Okay. Oh, I missed the JFresh hockey card.
Well, we're going to get there.
He's not an analytics.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
I think this is perhaps the most notable thing. He's a right shot defenseman. At least the Buffalo Sabres used him on the right side.
Well, he's a right side. He's played the right side, yes.
The overwhelming, I'm talking 70 to 80% of his minutes in the last 2 years have been on the right side for the Buffalo Sabres.
Fair.
Now this dovetails into the J Fresh card, if you want to bring it up, is maybe that's why these stats don't look great for Bowen Byram, is he's not playing on his natural side. So can he play the right side? Yeah, he absolutely can.
He is a left shooter, we should say.
That's why. But he's played predominantly last year with Rasmus Dahlin on his right side, over 600 minutes with him, and his stats were pretty good with Rasmus Dahlin. The problem is when he was away from Rasmus Dahlin, things changed fairly dramatically. He was okay with Owen Power, and he went to the left side with Owen Power.
It may also be, Blake, that he's just playing top pair and playing the top forwards just isn't his jam.
Well, certainly top pair might be, but again, the stats actually bear out that he's okay on the top pair. It's everything else. When he's played 60% of his time last year with Dahlin or with Power. It's the other 40% where he is sinking, and that is with Clifton, Jokiharju, Bryson, Matthias Samuelsson, all those guys. When he's been asked to play with lesser lights, he cannot float the boat. Which, if you're asking him to play with Philip Hronek, maybe that does work. Maybe he plays just fine in a role like that. You just
I still
buy everywhere here.
Yeah, I still can't wrap my head around how you would acquire him and then still get to your other business up front. I don't think I don't see that pathway.
Cost of acquisition is a big risk here.
And look, if you're telling me a Hughes trade is coming down this summer, okay, then it makes a whole lot more sense to me. But just as a pure ad, when you need a second line center, when you're probably going to need 2 top 6 or at very least top 9 forwards if Besser and Suter are out the door in free agency, that's just because, of course, you have so many eggs in next year's basket because of the Quinn Hughes situation.
Yeah.
So I'm having trouble with that.
Some context for the JFresh hockey card that we showed you as well. Jerry responded on Twitter saying, in the same world where, and he attaches Eric Brandstrom's JFresh hockey card, 83% projected WAR versus the 3%.
Yeah. And
Brandstrom just signed in Europe, and Byram is being coveted somewhat, I think, in the NHL circle. So, hey, it's not the be-all and end-all. Now, I've maintained to this minute Eric Brandstrom's a National Hockey League defenseman who has been done wrong here. But he's not going to be a star. He's not going to be what most 83% look like. And I don't think that Byram necessarily looks like what most 3% look like either.
I would hope not.
Yeah. But there is still some coloring in there on what you're getting, I think.
The other matter with Byram is concussion history there.
Yes.
And, of course, Philip Hedl has something similar and, of course, finished last season not playing due to concussions. Should note, Byram played all 82 last year for the first time in his career, put up 38 points. Actually played 73 games the previous year as well.
That's pretty good 2-year span.
Yeah. Quite good durability here over the last.
And we've seen guys do that. I mean, we never thought Sidney would play another game necessarily.
Oh my God,
and
there was a time when we were all worrying about the future of the face of hockey.
And he's rambunctious. Sidney does not play a shy game.
No, he does not.
If you're worried about, Byram maybe he's playing more cautious. There
are players who have bounced back, from concussion histories and went on and had long and fruitful careers. The Daily Poll question brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now open for 2025. Taking your online bookings for any time this season. Lock them on in. Follow on social at Whistler Golf. The bear activity has been tremendous up there this season. And if you have a group of 12 or more, ask them about the Sekerson Price midweek specials, our special, whistlergolf.com/groups. Let's get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Last call for hockey fans. The Cup will be in the building in Florida tonight as the Panthers look to repeat as champions with a win over Edmonton in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. Ex-Canuck, Panthers legend Roberto Luongo to bang the drum, fire the crowd up in the pregame. And then out in Abbotsford, the Baby Canucks and Charlotte Checkers meet in Game 3 of the Calder Cup Final, with one team taking a big step towards an AHL championship. Folks, this is the final time in hockey season 24-25 where you'll have 2 games ongoing. Should the Stanley Cup Final be extended to a Game 7, that will go Friday. And as we know, the Calder Cup schedule is tonight, Game 4 on Thursday, Game 5 on Saturday.
2 hockey foci tonight. One of the great words in the English language. Foci, double I.
Spell it?
Focii. 2 focuses, if you will.
Oh, the plural of focus.
Foci.
Focus. Oh.
Yeah.
Not hard C?
Nope, I don't think so. Foci. Yeah. There you go.
I will take you and your English Lit degree. I'll take your words for it.
Quite literally. Yeah. My word for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I won't be able to watch the AHL game, of course, but we'll take Rinkwide's word for what happened.
Jeff Patterson will be in on Rinkwide again this evening.
Get the lowdown there, and interesting lineup decisions for both the Abby Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers. I think we don't focus on the team that's ahead generally in terms of lineup decisions and that sort of thing, often because, winning coaches stay with a winning lineup.
Which is, to me, so outdated.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the modern coaches dispense with that to some degree. But I think Edmonton is just, it's been proven they do not have the depth that the Florida Panthers do.
No, they do not.
So there is just a revolving door there because they're trying to figure out something that works really well.
Mm-hmm.
And they can never find that because they just don't have the depth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most people are of a consensus that what they've decided on for tonight is probably the best foot forward.
What have they decided tonight?
That is Arvidsson out, Kapanen is in.
I was surprised they took Kapanen out, actually. I thought he had played quite well.
Yeah. And Kent Klingberg in for Troy Stetcher.
For Troy from Richmond.
Yeah.
And Skinner?
Skinner's in, yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Interesting response from Connor McDavid yesterday to a very good question. He was asked how much pressure he feels to win the Stanley Cup as the game's best player. And the first thing he said is, that's a pretty heavy question. And he's not wrong. But hey, with being the best player in the world comes that sort of territory, comes those questions, that responsibility, if you will. And then he continued to said, if you think about it that way, you'd probably be pretty crippled.
Yeah. And that's great.
And I do wonder whether that is a little snapshot into the soul there, Blake.
Well, I think
a little microscope into something that, he may actually be thinking.
Well,
I keep hearing that all the best players in this game eventually break through and win a Stanley Cup. Here's my second crack. All these great players who won their second time, Gretzky, Crosby, and others. I do wonder whether the weight of expectation, not just from his market, but from the hockey world at large, might be getting to 97.
See, I'll say this. I think that elite players, it's one of their elite skills, compartmentalization. And this goes to what Richard Zokol had told us all those many moons ago about being an elite golfer is intellectually, you just had a double bogey. Like, it's not like you actually forget it, but you find a way to forget it. And a guy like Connor McDavid does the same thing. Does he believe he's the best player on the planet? Yes. And his new contract, which he may sign this summer, probably will sign this summer, will show that he will demand payment commensurate with the best player on the planet. And so he knows that, but does he consciously consume that on a nightly basis? No. I don't think he actually goes through that exercise of, I am the best player on the planet. I should win this hockey game tonight.
No.
So, because that would be crippling. I think that's what he was saying, is that he doesn't put that sentence together ever, because it would be crippling. But he just has the confidence
But I think he knows it's out there, Blake. Like, I think he knows the conversation is around him.
Well, the conversation of legacy, and he should probably have a cup by now. He probably knows that, yeah. He also knows, I think this is amongst the biggest team games. I would say football probably a little bit more so than this, but this is a pretty big team game. You cannot play 48 minutes like an NBA player.
No.
You know, like you are more than just yourself. As an Edmonton Oiler for Connor McDavid. But, I mean, it's still, and we talked about this yesterday, you know, he will be 29 mid-season next year. That is late in the game. Sidney Crosby won his first a lot earlier. Wayne Gretzky won his first a lot earlier.
Yep.
Mario's a little further along.
But you're right. Games don't tend to get better after 30 years old.
No.
Sometimes they do.
No.
Now, we've seen some rare and elite athletes be playing at the top of their game into their 30s or even 40s.
The other thing that other teams,
the
guys that we just, not the Crosby one, but Gretzky and Lemieux before him, I mean, it was a non-cap era. If you knew you had that talent, you just made sure that you spent to surround that guy with the talent to make it happen.
Fair. It was harder to win or easier to. It's harder to win now. Yeah, it was.
So
think of those Pittsburgh teams, how ridiculous they got. I mean, they were just adding every Hall of Fame.
But the comparable for the early cups for Crosby is fair. You know, that's in the cap era.
Yeah. Here's the other thing. We were talking a little bit about this with John Shannon yesterday. What is Connor McDavid's signature moment to date? Now, I had a friend text me the other day about that assist in Game 2, where he stick handles through like 3 guys and feeds it cross ice to Trace. And my friend asked me, like, is this going down as one of the greatest assists in the history of hockey? I'm like, well, that's a really broad category. But there are principally few people in the history of the game who could pull that off, if anyone. So what's the signature moment?
Four Nations.
I was just going to say, I think it's probably the game-winning goal at the Four Nations, right?
Yeah.
That's in a Canada jersey. That's not in an Oilers jersey. But here's the thing. And you've referenced it. Athletes of this order, the unquestioned best in the game. And look, I think you can make a year-to-year case that a McKinnon, a Kucherov, even a goaltender like Hellebuck,
but over a 4-year run, but over a 4-year rolling average, there's no chance.
I think if you surveyed 32 NHL general managers, you get the first pick of anybody in the league. I think 32 out of 32 would take Connor McDavid.
Yes, agreed.
This tends to be where they come out with their best, right? Where they take control of the proceedings.
As best
when
again
their team
that
is
you can
down
in hockey.
or on the ledge, yes.
Yeah.
This is where they shine. So I am interested to see whether that's going to be the case with Connor McDavid. I am also interested to see how much he involves his teammates tonight, Blake, whether he thinks that's a better way to go about countering this Florida team, or whether he takes more on his own shoulders, whether we're going to see him shoot the puck more.
Well, if they're in a trailing position past the half-hour mark, if they're trailing past the 30-minute mark of the game, middle of the second, I think you're going to see a lot of Draisaitl and McDavid together.
I think so. The other thing, we mentioned he scores the game-winning goal at the Four Nations. This could be the signature year of his career, even without a Hart Trophy, right? If he wins it for Canada at the Four Nations, and of course dramatically so in overtime against the U.S. in Boston, and he lifts the Stanley Cup, and I suspect if Edmonton wins the Stanley Cup, that he'll be the Conn Smythe winner.
I like the narrative there, Matt, because it's a year in which he merely gets 100 points on the nose,
right, and finishes 10th in Hart Trophy voting.
And it was, I think, the narrative spun would be he did what he needed to do in order to get the team success this year,
right. And the other thing
paced himself.
If they win the Cup and he wins the Conn Smythe, I think he's probably the Canadian Athlete of the Year too. despite Summer McIntosh's heroics. And we'll see. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander may be an MVP as well.
MVP champion, yes.
Yeah, but who knows? Like elite athletes, they find little things to motivate them. And, I do wonder whether he's casting an eye and going, wow, like look at what Gilgeous-Alexander is doing in the NBA. He's sort of risen in prominence amongst Canadian athletes. We're going to see the best out of Connor McDavid here over the next couple of games. Because here's the other thing. And we have talked about this as well. In fact, I had an audience member point this out to me this morning. Edmonton seems to exist, the Oilers seem to exist in a joyless environment. McDavid and Draisaitl, forever pissy, forever grumpy. Even winning playoff series and bristling at questions. For their sake, I hope they win. Just so they can find him. They just don't seem to be having any fun. And look, it's not like fun and joy and a lighthearted environment equals championship, or is an advantage over a team that isn't having as much fun and does exist in a sort of more serious orbit than the team that's playing in a final. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the San Jose Sharks room when they had an excellent team, Blake, and boy, was it light, was it airy, was it fun, jocular, all those things, in part because of Joe Thornton. They never got over.
They never could win the big one.
But look at the contrast here between these two teams. Like, it's not like Florida is chock-a-block with, gregarious outside personalities. But I would also argue they seem to have gotten a shot of adrenaline with Brad Marchand. It's so hard to repeat, especially in the cap era. Coaches looking for touchstones, for messages. He's looking for new message carriers. He's looking for new dynamics in the dressing room. And Marchand seems to have provided something for that Florida team on top of what he's doing for them on the ice. I mean, these trips to Dairy Queen the night before a game are, honestly, though, you probably have some guys who are tightly wound. Here comes Brad Marchand. Let's go get a blizzard. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
whereas Edmonton just seems to be just gripping at all times. So I do wonder whether Florida, and especially with a cup, especially tonight on home ice, can come out and play with less pressure and more carefree. Edmonton, it just seems like the pressure ratchets and ratchets and ratchets. And it just seems like the weight of the world is on their shoulders, particularly Draisaitl and McDavid.
Winning teams have to find the sweet spot of what gets them going, of what elevates them, that extra 3%
right.
that distinguishes.
New motivations.
And it doesn't have to be slights. We've talked about that. That can be one of them. But no, it doesn't have to be that. It could be something as benign as blizzards before,
and
right
shooting
before.
rats, plastic rats.
Yeah, but taking that pin and popping the tension, and we saw the Oilers via that documentary go to the intensity route last year, where McDavid's screaming at them, and hey, some days you're going to try that.
Yep.
And you wonder ahead of a big game like this with their back against the wall, does somebody do something? Yeah. It could be hijinks. It could be inspirational. Like it could be just on the button inspiration.
The first 10 minutes tonight are so important for Edmonton, Blake. You can't fall behind again.
Always
there's
chasing.
There's a part of me that thinks if they had just played a couple of more first 10 minutes better in this series, where would it be?
100%.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to goaltending.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Also, should mention it got heated this morning. The Florida players didn't leave the ice in a tidy manner at the prescribed time. Some of the Oilers players didn't appreciate that, started hollering. If that is just a player who lost track of time, so be it. If that is intentional and part of the quote-unquote gamesmanship of being on home ice, that's so Mickey Mouse.
No, but I think it could be gamesmanship on the other side of let's piss them off a little bit. Let's linger.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like if Florida was doing that intentionally, it's just
the exact same problem happened in 2011, Bruins and Canucks. Exact same problem happened
in Game 7.
No, not for Game 7. I think it was
okay.
earlier in the series. I think it was in Boston actually, but I think the exact same thing happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Is this one of the?
This is pretty time-honored tradition.
Okay.
Yeah.
As for Abbotsford, we're anticipating Jonathan Lekkerimäki gets back in the lineup here. I think it could well be for Danila Klimovich as well. The
just hope it doesn't go to overtime because he's
game
your
hero.
overtime
Yeah,
winner.
exactly, the game one hero. One of maybe a couple of changes for Manny Malhotra and his staff going into this Game 3 against Charlotte. And speaking of the first 10 minutes or opening up, I love what JPAT tweeted today with regards to you're on home ice in a cup final, the first game you're playing here on home ice. Come out firing. Jeff's watched all these games, and they sort of, they have that feel-out round, if you will, a boxing analogy. They just, come out, throw a few jabs, take a few jabs, prance around the ring. No. Going to have a big, enthusiastic home crowd there. Time to dictate. Time to dictate physically, time to dictate with puck possession and getting some good chances early on. I agree with Jeff. Stack a few heavy shifts early to set a tone. Maybe double shift some of your best guys early. Would love to see Abbotsford jump out and take control of this game, grab it by the neck in the early stages, especially because that Charlotte team has played very well away from home this year.
Yeah, and we've seen that lately where home ice and home court too, like just home advantage in North American sports seems to be going away just a little bit, and you got to find a way. And I think it is a truly legacy defining game here. There is something more respectable. The players won't think this, but Matt, losing back-to-back years in Game 7, while it, again, doesn't make them feel any better as they get off the ice in those Game 7s, I mean, when you get minutes away from winning in 2 straight years, you're a pretty damn good team. And not that Game 6 diminishes that greatly, but, I mean, my goodness, that is right to the bitter end in 2 straight years.
Yep.
And bitter being the operative word ultimately.
Yeah.
But I think you ultimately then years down the road will say, my God, that close.
Yeah,
razor thin to being back-to-back champs yourself. So winning this one, though, you need to win this one to get there.
Still 46 with a super chat here. Our super chat's always open, folks. Half proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation. Says, here with my son, section 311 going to the game tonight. Oh, awesome. A father and son trip to a cup final game in Abbotsford tonight. Good for you guys. Enjoy the game. Then there's this on the Calder Cup Final. If you're into omens, the Charlotte Checkers apparently chartered the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz plane to make the trip from North Carolina here to British Columbia. It still has the Harris-Walz livery.
No kidding.
From last year in the failed presidential run. Just putting that out there.
That is a bit of an omen, isn't it?
They got into a loser plane. They should have seen if Trump would have let them charter his plane, his personal plane.
Or at least the new
big,
one.
Big, beautiful plane.
The Saudi one that's coming in. They've got a surplus of planes.
He's got a surplus of planes.
Yeah.
How was it you didn't call the Trump organizations? We're winners. We're playing Canada. We're trying to annex them.
Yeah.
Can you loan us the big, beautiful plane? Must have been quite a sight when it landed at. Did it land at YVR? Did it land at Abbotsford? I don't know.
That would be weird to see landing.
Can Abbotsford take on a plane that big? I don't know.
To be fair, do you know how much paint it takes to redo the livery?
Well, that's it. The livery on a plane is that's a big job.
It weighs thousands of extra pounds because of the paint.
Yeah.
That's why, was it American?
A lot of decals.
American Airlines or United American or U.S. Airways used to not paint their planes for the most part, just a little bit of a logo because the cost of the extra gas that you need to spend because of how much extra the plane weighs with the paint.
With the paint.
They deduced that you would spend that much X number of dollars more per year. So they're like, that's not paying them.
No.
Look like Airstream mobile homes.
Well, just pick up a can of paints and think of hundreds or thousands of them, right? For a plane.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. We wanted to talk to you about a bit of travel yourself, like up to Squamish maybe for beer. How does that sound? Come find Yellow Dog Brewing Neighborhood and Yellow Dog at the Squamish Beer Festival. Saturday, June 21st. It's this coming Saturday. I'm giving you lots of lead time. Make your plans accordingly. Full day of beer tasting from lots of local craft breweries and cideries. Grab your tickets now and join everybody in the heart of Sea to Sky country.
Cideries and foci. It has been quite a day of linguistics with Blake Price. Okay, we're 2 weeks to free agency here. And yes, we will be here for you on Canada Day, breaking it all down. Frank Saravelli saying the Canucks are drawing a line in the sand. They don't want to pay guys for career years or coming off career years or career years as a benchmark for a new contract. Fair enough. Don't disagree philosophically with that for an organization. But, of course, you are subject to the laws of economics, supply, demand, scarcity. So if you're going to take that stance and that tact, you better hit on the players you do sign. And so nobody at this point expects that Brock Besser or Pius Suter will be back as Vancouver Canucks next season. Fair enough. But that's 50 goals on a team that needed more goals to begin with. So that would be quite a challenge.
Yeah.
For Messieurs Rutherford and Alvin. And I say Rutherford because Frank has also said that Rutherford has both hands on the wheel now, that he's taken full control. For a while there, of course, it looked like Jim was taking a step back and that Alvin was finding his voice and being more assertive and really running the show. And Jim actually answered some questions several months ago about, well, that's the GM's job, or ask Patrick, things like that. I wonder whether Rutherford has taken back some control because of the Paolo Aquilini situation. That the two brothers, Francesco and Roberto, are buying out their youngest brother, Paolo, from Canuck Sports and Entertainment, and whether that's created a situation where finances or whatever the case may be, but Jim feels the need to get involved there.
Well, I don't think it's finances because I don't know that that a winning season really changes the calculus there to a big enough degree. But I think they just need some positive PR around this team. If they're trying to sell a piece of it, when everything is negative, when everything is being talked about as what's wrong with an organization, from the lack of a practice facility, from owners squabbling amongst the familial selves, and something has got to turn right. And Jim Rutherford is trying to put his foot down and say, it's not my department. Not my department.
Fair enough. I wonder this, Blake, because it was pretty clear to me that at the trade deadline, Patrick Alvin got Aquilini'd for the first time. And what I mean by that is I think Patrick Alvin knew that trading Brock Besser and Pius Suter, and to a lesser degree Derek Forbort, were the correct managerial moves from a hockey perspective. And I think he also learned, and perhaps the hard way, oh no, we ain't taking no steps back and missing the playoffs or giving up a chance to miss the playoffs because we have to trade these free agents. Every single thing Patrick Alvin had said prior to that was about the trade deadline acting like an extension deadline for UFAs to be, not losing assets for nothing, understanding value and asset bleed and which side of the ledger to be on there. And then that didn't take place. I think that had a lot to do with ownership. And I do wonder whether you're in an environment now with the two brothers having to come up with a fair bit of money where that is tied in to the Canucks summer and what they do. We'll see. But if the Canucks strike out on any kind of trades for a top six forward and then aren't there on July 1st bidding and securing the services of some of the best free agents, we'll know something's up. So we're a couple of weeks away from that.
Well, the accusation of the trade deadline is they got Aquilini because they wanted to make the playoffs. If you don't sign anybody on July 1st, how do you expect to make the playoffs?
Oh, that's it. Hey, fair enough. I'm just saying, we came out of that COVID year and a Canucks team that felt great about itself after winning a couple of rounds in the postseason bubble, and then sat there and watched all these UFAs walk.
But that was different because
it was different
because they knew they couldn't fill the joint anyway, right? They knew they couldn't.
Well, they knew they were getting fans back in the stands the next season.
Partial.
Yes, no, fair enough.
Now they still want to. They still want to fill the bar.
Again, Alvin's inaction at the deadline was telling. Like, there wasn't a decision made there to be a buyer or a seller. Like we talked about it at the time. Okay, if you're not going to sell, then buy. If the playoffs mean everything, then go out and strengthen your team.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was inaction and indecision there. Saravelli wonders about Besser in Boston. Boy, wouldn't that be a thing? Brock Besser playing for the Boston Bruins. A lot of alliteration.
Yeah, that'll be easy.
Jonathan Marchessault open to a trade after spending just one unsuccessful year in Nashville. Stanley Cup champion, feisty little player. You wonder about the interest from the Canucks or elsewhere.
You should be buying at a low ebb there, given that he is 34, has 4 years left, and showed great signs of a backstep and an aging process there with, I was going to say his worst season in a long time. He actually had a 57-point season with the Vegas Golden Knights in 22-23 as well. So almost exactly the season that he just had with Nashville. But, you're not going to be getting the 75-point guy from yesteryear with the Vegas Golden Knights.
I don't think so. He's got a full no-move clause, but as you say, Blake, the contract there is just so onerous with 4 years left at 5.5 for a player that age. I wonder whether this costs you anything in terms of a trade return.
He's 35 before the first half of the season is done, too. So, he's playing the bulk of this year as a 35-year-old.
Well, and from Nashville's perspective, if you just get rid of the contract, is that value enough?
Yep.
Reinvest that $5.5 million elsewhere after it didn't work out. And I do wonder whether Marchessault becomes a plan B for a number of teams for that reason. Mm-hmm. Okay, we weren't able to land the guy in a trade that we hoped to land. We weren't able to land the top free agent. Where are we going now? Could it be Marchessault? He's got a full no move for the next few seasons. But, yes, he could be a lower cost trade acquisition. We talked a little bit about this with Alexei Lafreniere of the New York Rangers because he's got 7 years left on this big extension at $7+ million that kicked in and took another step back season, and it looks like the Rangers are unhappy with their group and looking to redeploy. So there are a couple of trade targets out there that may not come at huge costs, and you wonder whether the Canucks are going to get in on that. They do have some cap space available. Others have much more than them, but
do you peel off a medium asset though and ask them to gobble up $1.5 million on that deal?
On who's Lafreniere or on
Marchessault?
So the first thing I would look at is Nashville retaining on anyone as it stands. Okay, so they will be retaining on Matthias Ekholm for this upcoming
They've got 3
season.
They just had 2 spots expire.
Well,
so they've only got the
2
one.
spots only expire July 1st with the new league year.
Yeah.
So that would be a post-July 1st trade. So possibly we could see. But, Nashville's typically been a money-conscious franchise. There is no, huge fat cat billionaire that owns that team. It's a consortium.
But even the Ekholm retention is just $250, so it's not.
Yeah, it's not too much. Yeah. The other one that I'm starting to wonder a little bit more about, and did not spend a lot of time on this player whose name has been in trade rumors for a long time now, because just everybody looked at him and Rick Tocchet and said, there is no fit there. We don't yet know what kind of system Adam Foote is going to play. I mean, I imagine it's going to be similar to Tocchet, the one NHL head coach he's worked for, but who knows? Mm-hmm. Does Trevor Zegras come at a lower cost now than he would have in the past? And I ask that because the Anaheim Ducks have not only added Chris Kreider here, but all the insiders seem to think Anaheim is going to be right there on the with big tickets for some of the big-name free agents. We've heard Mitch Marner tied there. So would they be willing just to get off Trevor Zegras, not necessarily from a cap space standpoint, because they've got a lot of cap space, but just because he's a $5.75 million player who still has restricted free agency and arb rights ahead of him come next summer, hasn't worked out as well, but is an attractive reclamation project at 24 years old across the league. You think Anaheim would take less now just to finally get themselves off of Trevor Zegras and further redeploy his salary to what they reportedly will be hunting here in the offseason?
Could very well do that. I think that's an option for them. I think they are probably done with his act and probably don't think. And remember, Verbeek never even saw the good years of Zegras.
No.
So he doesn't even have the warm fuzzies of the back-to-back 60-point seasons. Mm-hmm. I think Ryan Strome might be available too, for that matter.
Yep.
Different set of circumstances. It's a 31-year-old center. He's a half point per game, so that is pushing it to call him a second-line center, but on the fringes.
And the other thing about both those players, no trade protection at all.
Pretty rare
for Zegras.
in today's world.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I think I counted up. It was like 270 players or so had some degree of trade protection. So, I mean, the world is Verbeek's oyster in terms of finding new homes for those guys. He doesn't have to play ball with any kind of limited, no trade, no move, or get the player or agent's direction permission. Raquel still makes a lot of sense because of the Pittsburgh factor and because he's just a damn good goal scorer. And the Canucks need goals.
But he's not fast.
And Pittsburgh is selling.
Like, he is a cheaper Brock Besser. Is that fair?
Well, he's $5 million. He's got an 8-team no-trade list, so you would think the Canucks probably aren't one of the 8, but who knows?
But he's not a play driver. He's a finisher. And he's not fast. So he is starting to sound a little bit like Brock Besser a little bit. But at $5 million, you'd have Brock Besser for $5 million.
And I'm going to play your game and throw it back at you here.
Worry about speed?
Well, just, there's probably not the perfect player out there available for you and gettable.
Nope.
So you're going to have to live with some imperfections. What imperfections are you willing to live with?
Yep.
And then this was somewhat instructive as we get a week and a half here to the NHL draft with the Vancouver Canucks holding the 15th overall pick. Thomas Drance on The Athletic, I think this was last week, went back and he looked at what picks in the 15 range have landed in trades. And it's not quite apples to apples because it's very rarely 15th straight up overall. There's oftentimes picks involved, additional picks involved, or salary retention or something like that. But when you look at what a first-round pick in the 15 range has landed in recent trades, Kirby Dach, Chicago, Montreal, Alexander Romanov, Montreal, New York Islanders.
So fringy players.
Dach was the 3rd overall. I think the Habs were hoping turned into that top 2 center. I'm not sure he got there.
But he was
Romanov was
already injury riddled too, Kirby Dach. Like, I almost wonder if the comparison there is Trevor Zegras. Like, 15th for Zegras, a similar trade to 15th for Dach.
Fair.
Like, damaged goods but good pedigree. Like, that was what Dach was, and that's sort of what Zegras is, right?
Yeah. And of course, the other thing that would equate way into that calculation for both sides is the quality of the draft class. And while not many are enthusiastic about this class. I mean, people think Schaefer and Misa will turn into very good NHLers, but they're not Macklin Celebrini level prospects, to say the least. And while I think people would tell you, top 15 is pretty good in this draft, drops off after that. So I don't know. Maybe 15 is well enough position that an acquiring team looks at it and goes, "Ooh, we want to get in that range," because the talent really drops off after that. Like, we've got 12 or 13 guys rated, and we think one of them at least will slide to 15 there. Or if 15's on the outside looking in what is already considered a weak class, and that you're going to have to lower your expectations from that level of player that has been acquired with, again, roughly the 15th overall in years past.
Yeah, I did see Craig Button, too, jumping up and down saying that stop with this is a terrible draft class. So he thinks it's a lot better than the reputation it's been given now.
So I have long felt this as well, and especially from the point of view of someone like Craig, who is a former NHL GM and director of amateur scouting. If you allow that talk to enter into your scouting room and your scouting meetings, that can be corrosive, not productive. There will be good players coming out of this crop of draft eligibles.
For sure.
It is your job to identify who they are and select them at the appropriate number, if given the opportunity. So the defeatism going into, again, a class of 18-year-olds. Lots can change with 18-year-olds, right? He knows this. He's got children. Some of them are younger than 18. Some of them are beyond 18.
So for comparison's sake, the 2012 NHL entry draft, not highly regarded with 2020 hindsight in terms of producing great players, but did produce players like Morgan Riley at 5th overall. Hampus Lindholm has played 760 games at 6th overall.
Excellent player. Yep.
Useful player for a while was Matt Dumba, right? 5, 6, 7, the 3 defensemen.
Yep.
Was that 7 defensemen in a row that got drafted?
Wow.
Philip Forsberg went 11th. Jacob Trouba 9th. Mm-hmm. Zemgus Girgensons 770 games. And then Cody Ceci, Tom Wilson, Thomas Hertl, Tuvo Teravainen, and Andrei Vasilevsky going in order in the mid-teens. Yep. 14 through 19, all playing well over 500 games.
It is an inexact science, and for everyone who wants to put out former 15th overalls who became non-entities in the NHL, fair enough. Just know there's a companion list with 15th overalls that turned into good NHL
15th
players.
In this draft was Cody Ceci, and you're thinking, Cody Ceci. Cody Ceci will get to 1,000 games.
Will he really?
He will play
1,000. Where's he at now?
871.
Oh, wow.
2 more years.
Mm-hmm. Right shot defensemen are like left-handed relievers. They can play.
That's true. Yeah, they get buoyed a little bit.
They get a lot of opportunities out there. All right, let's get to today's menu, brought to you by Greta. Fantastic spot to watch all the games or to pregame, postgame before you're heading over to the stadium and the arena. They're right there. But it's an even better spot for your summer sociable or team building event. If you have plans for a party, check out Greta. The street food menu is fantastic. The poutine is decadent. So are the tacos. Love the smash burger as well. Then there's the arcade. Pop-A-Shot. Table hockey.
Your faves. They're all there.
Not to mention all the video games of your youth.
Ms. Pac-Man.
The more modern video games.
She never married, huh? It was Ms. Pac-Man. It's a tough world out there to meet people, especially
for
Was
there
the
not
Pacs?
a baby Pac-Man at one point? They may not have married.
They didn't marry.
Like they had a
Boy, that's judgmental of you. They don't have to marry.
Well, in that era, Blake, that would have been quite controversial. My brother and I were such Pac-Man devotees that one summer my parents took us on a driving trip. We were living in Calgary at the time. So we drove out here to Victoria to visit my mom's aunt, And then we drove due south all the way to San Diego. So, like, we were on the road for like 6 weeks to 2 months sort of thing over the course of the summer. And in San Francisco, my parents broke down and bought my brother and I. Do you remember
Handhelds?
You could buy the mini
video
arcade games?
So good.
They looked like the actual arcade
How
game,
big? You're talking about the handheld or the actual?
No,
like,
like this.
Yeah.
You know, it was like maybe
6D
a foot high.
batteries.
Yeah, and then the noise, Blake, of the Pac-Man. Can you imagine that for hours on
While
end
you're driving?
until the batteries die? And of course, they're gonna die because you're playing this thing nonstop somewhere between Fresno and Irvine. And then at night, Dad, make sure you recharge the batteries. We've got to have
got
fresh
rechargeables. Wow.
We took rechargeable batteries.
You were well
So
to
my
do.
dad had to go out, fetch his battery recharger every night from the luggage, which of course is piled up in the back, to charge the batteries so that we could annoy the parents for 6-7 hours in the cabin the next day.
And those rechargeables were terrible back in the day.
They did not last very long, and that Pac-Man game sucked a lot of battery life, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Anyways, Greta, check it out, 50 West Cordova.
We digress.
For more info to book your event, gretabar.com, 50 West Cordova, let the games begin. Then, of course, there was a fight of who gets to play the Pac-Man game.
I was going to say. I'm sure you guys dealt with that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Bet365. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. I was on the Halliburton over points last night. Then he got an injury and fell woefully short. So I'm going to give you the honor here on the tee.
Yesterday I gave you the game. Has it changed? It has. It's gotten even juicier today, folks. Oilers plus 135. So it's gotten even better for your bang for the buck. But I'm going to go anytime goal scorer. And I'm not going to go to the guy that has maybe his legacy on the line because I think we saw the recipe. Connor McDavid attracts attention. Connor McDavid weaves through players and dishes to Leon Draisaitl. Anytime goal scorer for Leon Draisaitl, also plus 135.
So I wanted to bet this Canada-Honduras match.
Yep.
But there is zero value on Canada at minus 225.
The reputation now is a detriment to the bets.
I'm considering the tie here at plus 350 because, as we've noted, Canada's laid some eggs in this tournament before against lesser opponents than Honduras.
Pre-Jesse Marsh, but yes.
And you know, we'll get into it later. And we've also seen a couple of results already in this tournament that are raising some eyebrows. But I got to thinking, if you believe in Connor McDavid, like if you think that we are on the precipice of a Connor McDavid signature moment in his career, or if you're that Canucks fan that wants Florida to win, why not bet Edmonton to win the series right now? It's plus 280. If Florida wins and you want Florida to win, great, you're happy. Florida loses
a big
tonight.
number. Yeah.
If Florida loses tonight, you got nearly 3-1 riding on Game 7.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Which is going to make it interesting, if not fun, if not profitable for it. I'm just, when people zig, you zag.
Yep, I like it.
Oilers plus 280, just for giggles.
To win the series.
To win the series. I got to win 2 in a row here. Yeah. Want to get in on the action of the Stanley Cup Playoffs at Bet365? They got you. Game props, player props, totals, money line. You can bet futures like series winners, Conn Smythe winners as well. Whatever your bet. Never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app. Get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Must be 19 or older. Oh, we didn't even mention the menu. Cam Robinson is going to join us. Also get into the Gold Cup. BC Lions back at practice. Work started, but then... Anyways, we'll see about Nathan later in the week. Cam Robinson next. Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
And also historic is the Toyota electric lineup. You've known the Prius for decades already. Can you believe it? If you're thinking, there's no way it's decades. It is. You're just that old. But they've also got the BZ4X, and it's the new Toyota you've been seeing around the roads. We're probably going, what is that? That's the Toyota BZ4X, and you should really go to your Pacific Toyota dealer and take one for a test drive today and fall in love. 100% electric. That means HOV eligible. It means never a gas station again. Go check it out. You can get $5,000 in incentives right now. You can get financing at 0.99% over 36 months, APR. And
there's more.
All the joy that it will bring you. ShopToyota.ca.
Cam Robinson is the director of content, director of film scouting for Elite Prospects. He joins us typically Tuesdays. How are you?
I'm doing well, boys. How we doing?
Yeah,
Good.
fantastic. We're a week and a half from your Christmas, the NHL draft, and we're 2 weeks away from Canada Day and free agency. Cam, what's going on with the Canucks? What are you hearing these days?
Seems like a little all quiet on the Western Front there. I checked around with some sources and nothing really loud that's out there. I did have one say that's strangely quiet in Vancouver for how much they're expecting them to get done over the next 10, 14 days. I pushed back and I was like, well, what do you mean? Is there something? And speculation maybe they have the framework in place on a deal that they're waiting for the AHL finals to conclude before pulling the trigger on it. Maybe they're waiting to get closer to the draft as their pick becomes maybe more valuable. If guys start to slip a little bit, that might be enough to nudge it over the finish line if they are looking to move that 15th overall pick. But as of right now, nothing really percolating that I'm hearing anyways.
Yeah. You picked up anything on this having to buy out Paolo Aquilini? And are there legitimate concerns that this could affect the Canucks' finances and their ability to spend?
We know that they need to come up with a whole bunch of money to buy out Paolo, and we know that the decision making isn't going to be moving from Francesco anytime soon. So I, like you and several kind of in the industry, have heard that they are looking to sell off some assets, whether that's some of their restaurant franchises like Pizza Huts, whether that's getting into bed with a massive hedge fund or a marketing group or investment group to bring up that, because it's going to be in the 9-figure sort of thing that they're going to have to generate, right? So. Again, nothing locked in, but whether that will impact their spending this summer, I mean, could come into play if like liquidity is an issue. Are they really going to be looking to sign big contracts? I didn't expect them to be major players, or don't expect them to be major players in free agency. I think that they would probably add around the periphery a little bit in that regard and more focus on trying to fill in the gaps via trade.
Yeah, and it's. Look, to their infinite credit, the Aquilinis have financed the hockey operations to the hilt over their tenureship. Yeah. The one exception, of course, was the COVID year where the taps were turned off heading into that.
They've also got the practice facility checked to right, which presumably is coming to camp. So, I mean, you talked about 9 figures. That's going to be in the 9 figures as well, or low 9 figures, but it adds up.
It does. Does it ever? Yeah, for sure. And it isn't an endless supply, right? Like there is a spot where it's going to get uncomfortable for them to keep financing these types of projects and spending up to the cap and maximizing your executive staff and your scouting staff and paying coaches that aren't there and things like that. That all those things add up over the years for sure. So it will be interesting to see. Like I said, I wasn't expecting anything major in free agency before this, but I don't think this is going to help them out in looking. If they were maybe contemplating going after maybe a second tier big fish rather than maybe those really, really big name ones that are going to have, half the market chasing them.
There's a lot of players that you forget when you are in the Canucks category of, and we're back to hockey operations now rather than business ops when I say this, when you're looking to spend cap money, but not looking to spend a lot of it because you can't. They don't have scads of space. You kind of forget certain players exist around the league. You're like scouring the dusty corners of teams' lineups and third line wingers. You're like, oh yeah, there's that guy. I remember him. He had a good year like 4 years ago. Should the Canucks try that? I saw Jonathan Drouin's name as an unrestricted free agent. I'm like, what's Drouin been up to? So you go down these these roads, but ultimately you need teams to sell. And the Pittsburgh Penguins are the only ones that have really stuck their hand up and said that we are going to sell. Is there anything there that makes sense for the Vancouver Canucks?
As far as makes sense, like we're expecting Brock Besser to test the market and to likely be moving on, very likely to be moving on.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have to look to fill that spot as well as adding a second line center to the guard. So, the names that are kind of out there, like everybody's been, Jonathan Marchessault, he comes at a price tag that's not too bad, 3 years left at 5.5, but he's 35 next season. That decline has already started. We saw it with Nashville. He's cheaper. He's got a cup winner, but it's like you could do worse, but it's like you could probably do better. I look at Rickard Rakell. He's 32 or will be next season. 35 goal scorer last year, 70 points. So he's on the high end of his value right now. The Pittsburgh connection, obviously, Rutherford and Alvin have enjoyed making deals with Pittsburgh. $5 million, 3 years left on his deal. Now, here's an interesting kind of angle to look at that, too, is that, the Penguins just hired the Rangers assistant coach, right? He would know a guy like Victor Mancini probably pretty well. So let's say, like, is the 15th overall pick in play? Is a prospect in play with that, too? If the Canucks maybe have something that could be in the works right now and they're waiting for the AHL, this is all speculation. Could it be a guy like Victor Mancini that's included in a package like that to Pittsburgh to get a guy like Rickard Rakell who could instantly slot in to your top six? And you could hope to squeeze 30 goals out of him. Probably realistically, it's like, hey, 25 to 35 on the really high end side. And it's a nice stopgap for those 3 years. You don't have to give a 7 or an 8 year deal to somebody and maybe overpay for their latter years. He's cost controlled at $5 million with the cap going up. It's not terrible, but obviously the risk of him dropping down from that 70.35 goal level is high.
Yeah.
Hey, Cam, we've heard Alexei Lafreniere's name is out there with the Rangers. And, of course, once upon a time, his agent was Emily Castengay, now Canucks AGM. What did everybody miss about him as a first overall? Or did they miss? Is it possible he still turns into the player that everybody projected at number 1 overall? And, it's a sizable contract. Like, is that a potential player that you could get without a huge trade return?
The Rangers are open for business. I can say that much, like with full throat. I think Keandre Miller is definitely on the block. I think they are listening on Lafreniere. And I mean, he hasn't even started that 7-year deal at 7.45 million. Took another, like a little step back last year after maybe taking a step forward. He put up 50 plus points. It's like, hey, maybe we could expect 60. But there's a couple things that have to go right for him that he did very, very well as a junior age player. And one of those was he shot the puck. He shot the puck way more than he's been able to shoot the puck at the NHL level. Like, I think he was sub 2 shots per game last season. Just, you can't do that. He probably needs a fresh start, to be quite frank. He needs to be given all the power play time. He needs to be on your first unit. You have to force feed him those minutes. You have to find a way to unlock his shot. I don't think that at his age now, it's unlikely we're going to see a first overall pick caliber production from him in his prime. But to think that he couldn't become a 75, 80 point player, I think it's still viable. It's still there in the right situation, surrounded by the right talent. And so with that contract, you would hope to get a little discount on the price to acquire. But he's also a former first overall pick. And even though it's been 5 years now, that stink stays with you, right? It lingers for a long, long time. And so that'll hold his value up, I think, too. So it wouldn't be cheap. And I'm sure the Rangers, if they are looking to move him, are looking to move him for a piece that is going to vault them forward in a big way right now.
There's a lot of smoke around Anaheim these days. They've already made the trade for Chris Kreider. They're being connected with Mitch Marner.
Yeah,
and some of the other top free agents. Pat Verbeek is even doing a bit of a media tour, and that's a regular, right? Doesn't tend to like to do that. And of course, we've known for some time that Zegras isn't exactly his cut of player. Just one more year on Zegras. He's still an RFA after that. They've been shopping him for a while, and boy, if they think or if they do land big fish, you wonder whether Zegras is the odd man out. And again, a potential lower cost in a trade return. Talk to me about Zegras and what you see happening there.
He's He's the type of reclamation project I can get behind on skill alone. We know he's a highly skilled player, and he showed it, early on in his career that he could put up some good points too. Like you said, he's still young. Now it's an upside bet. It's a swing that might not work out for you, but it shouldn't cost you that much to get him. And maybe he could be that second line center, that offensive guy that needs to be sheltered a little bit defensively too. But at the same time, it's like, it was very well known that he had, some attitude, some character issues, some, just not maybe a great guy in the room, not well loved by everybody. Not sure if he's grown out of that yet, or if he ever will, if he hasn't. So, that's tacked on top of it. So if you trust your leadership group and you trust your room that you can bring in a player like that and they can manage him, and then you can maybe squeeze the most out of that skill package that's there, then, I'm not upset about taking those types of chances. And that's the type of thing that if you can get a player like that at a low cost and then you can make it break right, that's how you really get ahead, right? You don't get ahead by paying full freight on somebody and still hoping that they break right.
Canucks have a good room. They've got a strong room.
They do. Yeah.
Notoriously strong, good room.
Right. So, it shouldn't be a problem at all. Shouldn't be any problem. No, I know. But so we'll see if it's a fit for Vancouver. But I do think I'm still waiting for some team to take a chance on him. And whether that is like, if the price just comes down far enough that a team's like, we have to do this. Right. And then maybe it works out for you. But, you mentioned Drouin. It happened with him too earlier in his career. Right. Is that teams were still willing to take a chance on the skill package and the lofty draft pick that he was.
Although Drouin never had back-to-back 65-point seasons, basically, like Zegras had, like that you can't turn away from that. God knows where that player has gone, but you know that it's in there.
Yep. And that's the thing, and that's what anchors teams to keep coming back and looking, and that's what will, keep a guy like Elias Pettersson, if, they keep dangling his name out on the trade markets, that's what teams will keep coming back to. Like, this is a 100-point guy. He did 100 points, right? Like, if we're gonna trade for somebody, why not trade for somebody who has huge upside?
Well, you also have to think about just what this team chemistry-wise and makeup looks like for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm talking about going forward. And if Elias Pettersson is, only they know what's in their heart about the future of Elias Pettersson. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about a center 1-2 punch of Pettersson and Zegras if that looks playoff ready for me.
And Hedl, the question marks with his down the middle. That is soft, that is light, that is injury concern, that is trouble for sure. So there's no like obvious player that you would want that is available to slot into that kind of 2C spot for them. So that's why I think they're going to have to get a little creative, and maybe they're going to have to add on the wing too to support that center who's in the middle.
And that's why I've said you make these acquisitions for the now, and you worry about tweaking for the cup contention when you're a little bit closer to cup contention. Like Rossi Pettersson is not great down the middle either for what we're talking about. But you know what? Get to the playoffs, then you can start to worry about tweaking, to win in the playoffs. But they are so far from that. Just add some skill first. No?
Do you agree with that philosophically, Kim?
I do. That like the fact that that Rossi and Pettersson down the middle wouldn't be ideal, but at the same time, it's like just go get talent, go get younger talent now, and figure it all out when the time comes. I keep looking at a team like San Jose. San Jose is coming, right? They're gonna have all this really exciting young talent, and then you go spend in free agency. You overspend in free agency, or you overpay in a deal to go get the one or two pieces that now it's like, okay, we're missing this. We'll go pay for it, right? So if it's Vancouver and down the line, they're like, hey, like Pettersson Rossi is not great for us in a matchup against a top Western Conference team. Okay, we'll go overpay for like that big, strong center who can also be a 2C for you, and maybe that pushes Rossi
or
down
a couple of hulking wingers or something.
Exactly, right? Yeah, fill it out in however you can do it, but you got to get to that point first. And if you keep trying to just like, we need to be a cup contender right now, you can't buy your way into that. You just simply cannot do that. You have to get value in places, you have to draft and develop well, and then you overpay when it's time to go.
Hey, is the Rossi market softer than many and perhaps Minnesota may have expected?
From my understanding, yes. And that's just because, I said it months ago on the show or weeks ago, whatever it was, that I didn't think Minnesota was all that sweet on Marco Rossi. And it's because not a lot of teams want to have a 5'9" center as in their top six. And if you do, he better be so good, right? He better be Braden Point, and he's not even that small. So it's nobody's really jumping up and down to get Marco Rossi, despite how talented he is, despite the production last season, because they also look at it, it's like, yeah, he played a ton of time with Kaprizov and saw time with Boldy. And so, yeah, good center, lots of skill, but not driving, not expected to drive. So if you bring him in and you're like, now you need to be our play driver on a second line and you're that size, unless you have that big hulking 1C, it's not a great fit for a lot of teams, and especially buyers. So I do think the value is a little bit lower.
All right. I want to ask them about some draft prospects, but if you have anything Canucks NHL related, by all means.
No.
Because we talked about Bowen Byram last week with Cam, so we'll dispense with
Okay, one on the AHL level. Lekkerimäki's absence from the playoff lineup. Concerning for you, understandable. Where are you on that spectrum?
It's understandable. It's understandable for sure. I had one strength and conditioning guy reach out and just been like, he should have been off like weeks ago, and they should have just been having him working out. Like, he needs so much strength. Is that a lengthy playoff run is not going to help him develop long term. Get him out of the lineup and be like, you're done. I understand why it's disappointing for fans, though, because he's a player who saw NHL time this year, is supposed to be that guy who maybe fills in for Brock Besser in the short term and is your goal scoring winger. It's like, you'd want him to be like the frontline scorer on a team going on a deep run. Like, how exciting would it be if he had 12 or 13 goals in the playoffs right now and 20 points, and everyone's like, look at this, he's coming, he's ready, he's pushing for a spot, when it's like, hold on, he's not ready yet. And who's to say a strong offseason can't get him a little bit closer, but it's going to be a short offseason for him. So it's pump the brakes, but it is understandable for the type of player he is and the physical maturation that he's at this point. He just needs more time. He needs to get stronger. He needs to get faster. He needs to get more consistent. You
say short offseason. In a sense, though, even just being around the team, not chewing up all the calories playing the games. I mean, this is forced sort of, and this allows the team to have eyes on him a lot longer. Like, if they were eliminated 2 rounds ago, guess what? He's off into the ether. They don't have eyes on this young player. He sort of keeps them underfoot for a little while longer, doesn't it? And they can sort of monitor what he's doing right now. This might be advantageous even if he's not in the lineup.
Yeah, the thing is that there's like a in-season workout and fitness and routines, and then there's off-season workout and fitness routines. And I'm guessing and without knowing for sure, that he hasn't moved into off-season training mode yet, as he's with the team. Where now you're eating lots, you're lifting twice a day, you're really putting it on, trying to gain that lean muscle mass, which is so difficult to do while you are playing. And even though he's not playing, so like you said, he's not burning all the calories that he would be. I'd be skeptical to think that he's fully moved into that off-season training mode where they're like have their hands all over him, which would be great. Great to just monitor him and be like, here is what you're doing in your plan. But you have to hope that he's working with some good people back home in Sweden too.
We got a couple of more weeks of this, and again, until they dispense with the 15th overall pick, we're going to ask you about prospects who could fit there. Tell me about Justin Carbonneau, this winger from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, because the more I read about him, the more I find myself liking the profile.
I mean, on pure skill and like pure upside, I could make an argument that this is a top 5 player in the draft class, to be honest with you. IQ doesn't really support that prognostication, but like, he has highlight reel handles, like arguably the best handler in the class, almost to a fault sometimes in the queue, where he would just like, okay, first I'll deke this guy, then I'll deke this guy, then I'll deke this guy, then I'll go and do something. What I really liked, I saw from him in the CHL USA Top Prospects game, he was playing on a third line. And he played like this north-south game, chip and chase, got in hard on the body. And I was like, where's our human highlight reel Carbonneau gone? And I liked that diversity in his game. Top end, like, you're looking at a guy who could be like very top end here, is like Philip Forsberg. Like, he's on the wing. He has that kind of skill potential. But like I said, the brain doesn't carry as much weight as his skills, and which is why you're going to see him available probably in that 12 to 20 range. But he's an interesting one, a winger option for them. It's definitely interesting.
Well, and he's not small. Like, he's taller than 6'1". He's 200 pounds, and that's an interesting size. And then, speaking of interesting size, this kid from Windsor, Jack Nesbitt, a center iceman. He's an awfully big, 6'4", An awfully big boy. I know some people have him more in the 20s, but I have seen him floated in the mid-teens. What can you tell us about Jack Nesbitt?
Honestly, I think he's going to go right around where Vancouver's picking, and I wouldn't touch him in that spot if it was me. So, he is a 6'4" left-handed center who like can flash some like hard skill and like net front stuff. But everything, his entire potential hinges on mechanical development. And so he's like a stiff, narrow skater. His handling abilities don't match up well with his feet. Didn't do himself any favors at the U18s. Saw his role reduce consistently as the tournament went on. I had one, and it's in the guide there too, where, I get scout quotes and executive quotes for the EP draft guide. And one guy just said like, I wouldn't touch this guy in the second round. Like he doesn't even think he's going to be a good AHLer sort of thing. So I think the discrepancy on where people have him is going to be wild. But like you said, he's got the size. He plays in the middle of the ice. He has flashed some good stuff. He has some decent point totals. Is that I fully expect him to go right around that kind of 15 zone. But if it is Vancouver who does pick him, it won't be getting an A rating from me.
The better version of him is McQueen, of course. Have you heard any more updates on his health? Has anybody laid eyes on him? What's the confidence level in his rehabilitation from this back injury?
Yeah, really interesting stuff. So, we got to talk to him at the Combine in Buffalo there, and, 6'5", he's a monster. And, I snapped a little pic of him doing the pull-ups, and he cleaned out nine clean pull-ups. The back must have been feeling good, the muscles there. Apparently misdiagnosed during the season, and then the second injury had nothing to do with the back. He says he's good to go. He completed all the combine testing. He was the most scrutinized player from teams for physical testing, sure, especially on the heels of Caden Lindstrom, right? Where he went to the combine, didn't do everything, but like it was all roses and like everything's all good. And then of course he missed a full year of hockey. So I think that on another one on skill alone, like I could make an argument that Roger McQueen might be the most, the highest upside player in the entire draft class. And so it behooves teams to probably value those kind of high variance players at the very top of the draft in this situation. But I expect him to be there. He's not getting to Vancouver at 15, I don't think. I know Pittsburgh really liked him at 11. Like I think he's gone by 10, 11.
6'5" and a quarter, 198 pounds for Roger McQueen, the big Brandon center iceman.
Great skill.
Are we going to see this Chinese defenseman selected in the first round? For those who don't know, his name is Simon Wong. He is nearly 6'6". He is 222 pounds. He plays in the Ontario Hockey League, and he would be a trailblazer, right? The first ever Chinese national to go in the first round. Yeah. His mom bought a junior A team earlier too, so he could play on it. It's an interesting. They got some generational cash going through that. Yeah. As one does. Yeah. I don't expect him to go in the first round, but anything when we hit 25, it's like anybody, like it won't. No name coming out of there will surprise me, and because of how big he is, and like scouts have flocked to see him this season because of that size profile, and they're like, well. He's such a project, though. He's so unrefined, but it's like the potential is very, very big, almost as big as he is. Well, draft him, and if your ownership runs into any financial trouble somewhere down the road, maybe we'll be there to help out. Lastly, Cam, does Edmonton have one more or two more wins in them? What do you expect in what's left of the Cup Final here? Florida's taking it in 6 here. They're taking it in home ice. Bobby Lou working the drum tonight in-house. He's gonna motivate the boys and take it home. I mean, it's hard to bet against Connor and Leon, though, with their backs against the wall. It could easily go back to Edmonton for 7. Then all bets are off. But I think Florida's been the better team throughout the series, right? A couple of overtime winners Edmonton's needed, and then a few games where Florida's just dominated for long stretches. I think they close it out in 6. All right. He's doubting McJesus here. You're on record. Risky. Yeah. Yes. Thank you for this, my friend. Until next week. Okay. Talk soon. Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. If you have your tickets to the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sick Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Well, we got a big one tonight at BC Place. The Canadian opener to the Gold Cup versus Honduras. This is the toughest match of the group stage, a group that also features Curacao and El Salvador. Now, Canadian head coach Jesse Marsh challenged this market to sell out BC Place, and I do believe he meant the lower bowl.
That's all it's open, yeah.
Yes. After some somewhat disappointing attendance in Toronto at BMO for a couple of friendlies last week, there does appear to be a number of tickets remaining on the resale market. I'm not sure Coach Marsh is going to get his sellout, and it's also disappointing. And we mentioned this, and Blake, you're going to have to explain some of this to me. So Canada plays Honduras here.
Yeah.
Then they're off to the U.S. to play Curacao and El Salvador. I don't quite get, Blake, why we would be going to Houston, is it?
Yeah, Texas.
Yeah. To play these matches when you know you're going to get a better crowd, even if it's not quite completely what you were hoping for here in BC or even in Toronto. But yeah, they're off to Houston to play Curacao on Saturday. Help me out with that one.
Well, I'm going to guess a lot of it has to do with USA Soccer wanting to get the benefits to themselves. And I'm guessing they had to share a lot more of the revenue with Canada Soccer here at BC Place. And, of course, there's no need for that, in terms of...
But if you're playing before Crickets in Houston,
yeah.
Like how much... Because correct me if I'm wrong, but are you going to have huge Curacao or El Salvador contingents?
El Salvadorian fans, maybe. I don't think Curacao, but yeah, you could get some El Salvadorian fans, in the south of the U.S. But
have to ask, might they be chilled by ice?
Yeah, they might. You're right.
There have been some reports of ice targeting soccer games for detentions. The other thing, help me out with this. The what is it? Club World Cup is on.
Yeah.
So I saw the opening scenes from Atlanta and Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I want to say it was like Chelsea and LAFC or something like that.
That was yesterday, yeah.
Also before Crickets. Why are they playing that in Atlanta in a massive stadium when there is no connection to the market from either side?
The assumption was
Chelsea is such a brand that
it's Chelsea. It is one of the top 3 brands in MLS. Surely people will show up. Well, no, that's a huge stadium, as you talked about.
Yeah.
People were really nervous about too much soccer here over the course of a 3-year span. Copa, Gold Cup, and Club World Cup here, and then World Cup next year. Going back months, I was hearing how worried they were about attendance for both of these tournaments in lockstep with each other. And of course, the Gold Cup, a lot of these teams are not bringing their best.
It's just it wound up being 22,000 in a 70,000 seat stadium, Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta.
Doesn't look great.
It may be too much soccer here. Soccer saturation for the North American market. Anyways, we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully that. As for today, it's just the lower bowl. There are seats available. I saw some people in the YouTube chat yesterday talking about how it's $300 for my seats. I don't know where your seats are. I couldn't find. I was going right down to the bottom of the stadium, like your first 5 rows, and they were $100, $120. Like for a tournament soccer game, like that's what tickets cost, folks. Like that is not gouging. That is pretty standard stuff these days, and that might be just still too expensive for you, and that's fine. But that isn't crazy ticket prices.
Do you
for
know the
tournament
get-in
soccer.
price? Like
$55, I saw.
Okay.
Again, that's pretty reasonable for sporting events these days. Like if it was a friendly, that's a little steep for a friendly. But this is a tournament game. Like I don't know what to tell you. That's what they cost.
Back on Coach Jesse Marsh, who, if you don't know, is American, trained in the Red Bulls system, did find his way over to Europe and coached there as well. An interesting comment on the weekend. There's some dialogue like I'm addressing the U.S. team. That's not true at all. I want to make it clear I do not care about the U.S. team. I never want to coach the U.S. national team. I'm making that clear right now. He's kind of viewed as the one who got away, given that the U.S. national team has had so much drama around it now through a couple of coaches in the build-up to this 2026 FIFA World Cup. So is that, I mean, help explain that to me.
Basically, he was not really ever considered for the U.S. men's national team job in this latest window, because I think the sentiment for the U.S. men's team was, okay, we need a certified global elite soccer mind. We're going into a home World Cup. We can't just default to maybe the best American guy available.
Okay.
And so they skipped past him. Canada gleefully accepted him. And the rest is history. He's almost unbeaten as a Canadian coach. So he gets poked and prodded about that by, I think, reporters on both sides of the border, as to say something, because they know he's a speaker. He's going to say some
he's
stuff.
not afraid to say.
Yeah. And so they keep on sort of poking and prodding him, like, can you believe it? Have you seen their loss? Did you see their loss? And expecting him to explode and be like, I hate him so much, But he's sort of laying it down, like, guys, I'm not going to drag the team. He's come close in the early goings, the last half of last year. He came close with a few little hidden barbs. But he's just like, guys, I'm not going to drag the United States.
Yeah, and if there's some history here, Jesse, just make sure you don't ever say, and now we've got to fuck USA, a lilting Geordie accent.
And I think, who knows, maybe that's part of the equation for him too. Who knows?
Really nice story here. Josh Cloakey of The Athletic on a local kid who I asked you about last week, 21-year-old Nico Segur from Burnaby, who is on the Canadian men's national team. It's a lovely feature on The Athletic. It talks about how Nico at one point was a ball boy for the Canadian men's national team here at BC Place. But Cloakey writes, Jonathan David in 2019, Tajon Buchanan in 2021, Moise Bombito in 2023. The Gold Cup is a coming out party for Canadian stars.
Even Schaffelberg last year, too.
For Canadian stars, and he wonders if Segur might be the breakout star for this Canadian side.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, and they do need to start to address that right back issue. Richie Laryea is so injury prone right now in his later years, and he's just getting on now that you need a more permanent succession plan there to the right back. So if he can be that guy, and he looked pretty good in the Canadian Shield games, if there's more development there, and he's so young still, so young.
Well, he's 21 years old, and he's probably not, he's not as well known as some of these other Canadian players, in part because he plays his professional football in Croatia, and in fact could have played for Croatia, if I'm not mistaken.
And it, in fact, disappointed them. Like, he was enrolled in their federation. Like, they were expecting him to be a Croatian national team, and then he had a turnabout.
Anyways, this feature, if you're an Athletic subscriber, is really well written, really well done. And Nico opens up and talks about he is singularly focused on being the best soccer player he can be. He talked about how he has no other motivations. He talked about how he cut friends out of his life if he felt like they were detracting from his goal. So a story to watch, a young British Columbia to watch here tonight and through the Gold Cup. And got to be careful if you're Canada here. A couple of years ago, they had a couple of bad draws against the Guadalupe, Guatemala. So don't take Honduras lightly, especially since already in this Gold Cup, we have seen number 106 Guatemala upset number 63 Jamaica, and the Dominican Republic put a heck of a scare into Mexico on the weekend. I watched part of that match as well. So.
Canada, I think, has the group of death, and it's not true death. There's nobody that is in their category, but Honduras and El Salvador are not easy outs, and Curaçao's got all these Dutch cast-offs, Right. That is not an easy group for Canada. They have to pay attention every single match.
Yep. BC Lions back on the practice field today, and the big question surrounds Nathan Rourke's health. Now, I saw Farhan tweet yesterday that he thought he would participate in practice, but it would be limited. We'll see if he can make it through this week and or start against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers Saturday at BC Place. Of course, he took himself out of the loss Thursday in Winnipeg in the fourth quarter because of an oblique injury. He said he just couldn't put any zip on the football. Lions get defensive end Sione Tuiema back today, this week after a 2-game suspension. They have released a couple of players here, backup players. They might be getting healthier at linebacker, where 5 guys were missing from that position group in Winnipeg. Brady Oliveira not practicing in Winnipeg, so it appears they'll miss him again. He left in the first quarter last week. And that changes
ratio for them.
Well, but does it? Matthew Peterson, the Canadian back, went for 130 yards, Blake. In his first CFL game, a raw rookie out of the University of Alberta torched that Lions defense. You know, Benny, Mike Benavidez is going to be working on that run defense this week. The other thing we should note about the Lions, and look, it's the CFL. We're a couple weeks in. We don't know quite yet who's going to be good and who's going to be bad. I mean, Calgary's won 2 games here. But this very much appears to be the most difficult stretch of the Lions' schedule. They're back-to-back with Winnipeg, and we know how good Winnipeg has been in the West. They're then, after this game on Saturday, they're at Saskatchewan, at Montreal, at Edmonton, Blake. The rare 3-game CFL road trip, and we anticipate we may see one again next year for the Lions, with BC Place being unavailable for the World Cup. So 3 straight games on the road, and a lot of people like Saskatchewan and Montreal this year. And then they're back home July 19th against Saskatchewan. So you've got quality opponents, you've got road games, and you have your 2 short weeks here. Because remember, last week was their first short week, a Saturday to Thursday, and then the next short week is in July when they are at Edmonton on a Sunday and then back here at BC Place on a Saturday for Saskatchewan. So the next month could tell us a whole lot about the BC Lions and where they stand in the CFL pecking order 2025. And we should shout out and congratulate our longtime friend Sean White of the BC Lions. After 2 field goals and extra points, he has moved into the CFL's top 10 in all-time scoring. He's not going to catch Louis, but there he is. He's in the top 10. You've got another BC Lion there. He passed former Alouettes kicker Terry Baker, who played forever as well. C's back in action tonight in Eugene, holding a 1-game lead with 3 to play in the first half pennant race. They're back home a week from today. And how about this promotion, Blake? It is Main Street Hipster Night at the Nat a week from today.
It's an ingenious marketing ploy, because hipsters would love nothing more than to go to Nat Bailey and drink craft beer.
Hipsters love baseball.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Hipsters have got, in fact, there's a school of thought that, hipsters have helped revitalize baseball. People wondered, will young people have the attention span for baseball going forward? There's a lot of inaction. No, the hipster. By the way.
Well, baseball might have the best food of the big 4 sports.
Well, for sure. For sure. I mean, ballpark.
They take pride in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the things that Andy Dunn did here with the Canadians that brought people to the yard. And yes, there's craft beer at Nat Bailey Stadium, including Yellow Dog, and we suggest you try some. This got me looking up the definition of hipster.
Wow, can you really? It's like music genres. Like it's inexact. Feed it.
A person who follows the latest trends in fashion, in clothing and lifestyle, especially those regarded as being outside of the cultural mainstream.
I mean, it is, but again, you have to put it into a context. Like we're not talking about a fashionista, like a runway model. Like runway model is not in mainstream fashion either. Like it's out there fashion, but that's not what a hipster is.
Merriam-Webster's definition: a person who is unusually aware of and interested in new and unconventional patterns. It's a little broader and less specific.
I think that these are sort of old school definitions. I think hipster.
Well, there was a 40s subculture of hipster.
No, but I would say
Did
hipster
you know that?
nowadays.
I learned that as well.
Nowadays, there's more of an earthy feel to hipsterism. There's more.
Yeah. They're in tune with the terra firma.
Vintage element.
Thrift storing.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Or thrifting.
I mean, I think we might be leaving the
beard
beards.
but it's got to apply to both. You can't go beard.
The beard and flannel thing might be hitting its expiration date. I don't know where we're going with past that for the hipster. We'll see.
What about the circular rimmed sunglasses? Is that part of the uniform?
It has been. Okay. We'll just have to monitor Mumford and Sons and see where they go with things.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Wikipedia. The 21st century hipster is a subculture. Fashion is one of the major markers of hipster identity. And just to bring this full circle and fully confuse you, members of the subculture typically do not self-identify as hipsters.
No. They would never think themselves to be hipsters.
No. You see them as hipsters, but they're not going to tell you they're a hipster. In
and
fact, they'll push back.
If you are outraged by this conversation, chances are you are a hipster. Yeah.
Post-game fireworks next Thursday, and then how about this for the kids a week from Saturday? Marvel Superhero Day at Nat Bailey, including a custom comic book giveaway.
It's a very different crowd than Hipster Night.
Very different crowd than In fact, really, you're looking
Polar
at two opposite
maybe.
sides of the spectrum. NBA, where OKC is one win away now from taking the title. They beat Indiana in Game 5 last night. Perhaps more importantly, Pacers star guard Tyrese Halliburton aggravates a leg injury. He was mostly a decoy on offense. I lost my Bet365 because of that. The Thunder goes for the Larry O'Brien Trophy on Thursday.
And a terrible night for SGA.
He did not lead his team in scoring.
31 points.
He had a mere 31. One of his teammates went for a 40 burger. Wow.
I saw a hot take online from an NBA writer. If Shaylin Williams has a very good game in the deciding game, can he wrestle away the Finals MVP away from SGA?
Yeah, that'll be tough.
It's just Finals specific.
It's just Finals, not the full playoffs, right? That's the distinction between the NBA and the NHL. And shout out to the Vancouver Bandits of the CEBL. They erase a 20-point deficit. They have a 15-0 fourth quarter run to defeat Montreal on the weekend in a battle of the top clubs in each division. The Bandits are 8-1, best record in the CEBL, 3 straight wins, and they host Winnipeg Friday at the LEC. And as we mentioned last week, they score a lot of points, so they're fun. Poll question results from Monday ask you, what are you most excited about next season, the Canucks season or the Olympic tournament? People said
Olympic tournament.
Indeed. Percentage?
56.
58. There was a lot of write-in votes for the PWHL. Misner, I voted Canucks because without Russia there, it still isn't a true best-on-best tournament. Fair enough. AJ says, I'm honestly feeling done with Canucks hockey. The drama, the mismanagement, and the lack of doing what it takes to win. I'm seriously considering switching to European football. Okay. And Jay says, the emotions of Olympic hockey are intense, but last for the moment. The emotions of Canucks hockey penetrate my soul. That is something.
That's sort of what I was going with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just weren't as articulate as.
No, apparently, no.
I do not have an error or an omission from yesterday's program, which I'm sure is an error or an omission in and of its own right, because J-Pat corrected himself. He had the wrong center iceman on that waved off own goal. Anything to self-report?
No,
from
nothing
in
in the inbox.
How about that?
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube in particular, and wherever you get your podcasts, follow on social. That's Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays, and, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about, and keep it local.